Hey, it's Arc Party, and I'm Rob. You might notice that this episode is starting out a little bit differently than the previous few episodes. In those episodes, I would have the author first explain to you what their book is about in their own words, and then that would lead us into my discussion with the author. This time, the episode's structured a little bit differently, and there's a good reason for that. This is the first, and hopefully not last, time I'm doing a crossover episode with another podcast. So this episode, I am co-hosting with Michael David Wilson, the host and creator of This Is Horror. This Is Horror has been around for like a decade, and they're coming up on their 10th anniversary, 500 episodes. It's a big year for them. Michael was planning on doing an episode with Max Booth about his book, Abnormal Statistics, and I was planning on doing an episode with Max Booth about his book, Abnormal Statistics, and we said, hey, we love working together. Let's do a crossover episode. So this is going to be formatted a little bit differently. It's going to seem a little bit outside of the way that usually I run things when I'm totally in charge. So here's what to expect. First of all, you might notice that Michael takes the reins a little bit more than I have other people do when they're on the podcast, and that's totally expected. Michael is the main host of his podcast, and he's accustomed to doing things, the Michael David Wilson way. And I'm going to just be very honest. The guy is way more prepared. He's way more polished. He puts a lot more effort into doing these things than I do. I'm a little more off the cuff. So it absolutely made sense for me to let him do the work the way that he does best. And I love to sit back and just listen to a good conversation and throw in my 2 cents when it makes sense. So format's a little bit different. Another thing to point out is that this is the first of 2 parts to the conversation. We originally planned to do one long conversation with Max and put that out as one big long thing. There were some technical issues and some timing issues that made it so that we needed to split it up into 2 separately recorded conversations. So what you're about to get is the first half of a big long conversation about Abnormal Statistics by Max Booth III. We tackle some of the individual stories of the book. We also talk to Max about other stuff, like the fact that he also does a podcast, the fact that he's opening a bookstore, and kind of our history together in general. I will also point out toward the end, there is about 17 or so minutes that's kind of an outtake of us just kind of going off the rails and talking about stuff that didn't quite fit the flow of the main conversation. So it got cut from a certain point, and it'll get dropped at the end. So you'll hear me do my quick outro. And then after that, if you stick around, you're going to get some zaniness between the 3 of us that might not make total sense, but it could be entertaining and probably is more offensive than what, we originally planned the episode to be like. So like I said, this is the first part of the conversation. The second part is going to be recorded and released probably in the next couple of weeks. I hope you enjoy it, and stay tuned after my outro to check out some zany outtakes if that's the kind of thing that you're into.
Welcome to This Is Horror Arc Party Edition. We are going to be talking to Max Booth, and today I've got my co-host Rob Olson, formerly of Booked Podcast, now of Arc Party. Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Arc Party concept.
Sure. So I have been doing podcasts since April of 2011. Primarily, I was doing book reviews and author interviews, and that was with Booked. Booked ended in our 10th year, on our 10th anniversary. We ended that podcast, and now the new podcast I'm doing is called the Arc Party. And essentially, the idea of this is, instead of a review podcast, it is pre-publication promotion with authors. So you have a book that's coming out. It's not out yet. I talk to you, and we talk about the book and just kind of get people aware of stuff before it's out so they can pre-order and engage with their libraries and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so today we are going to be chatting with Max Booth. He will be releasing in a matter of days Abnormal Statistics, his short story collection from Apocalypse Party Press. And so, I mean, normally with Arc Party, you put these out quite a bit ahead of the release. I mean, you recently spoke to Cassandra Core, and their new book isn't coming out until May. But with
Right.
Max, this is going to go live, and then the next day, boom, you can buy Abnormal Statistics. Now, it may be because I took quite a long time to actually have a date that was ready for us to record this. It may not be. That could be one of the reasons. But anyway, Max is here now. Max, how you doing?
I just want to say I've been ready to do this for a while, and Rob has as well. So I don't know.
he's
I'm
hanging
doing
you
great.
out. He's hanging you out.
So you got Abnormal Statistics coming out in a few days. Yeah. So, I mean, how did this one come about? How did you first land the collection with Apocalypse Party Press?
Yeah, so I became aware of Apocalypse a few years ago when Ben, who runs Apocalypse, he emailed me to just tell me basically that he was a fan of Perpetual Motion Machine, my press, and how it had kind of inspired him to begin his own press. Because at the time, I was also working a shitty 9-to-5 job while also trying to do this press. He also has a similar type of job, and he found it kind of motivational, and I thought that was a cool thing to read from someone. So they were always in the back of my mind, and it helped that Apocalypse releases really cool books like Negative Space by B.L. Yeagle and Bonding by Maggie Seibelt. Most of the books I've read by Apocalypse are super cool, and they have a pretty just nice vibe to them that I enjoy. So I forget what led to me submitting a collection to them, but I knew I wanted to get one out. And I didn't want to self-publish it like I've done a lot of my books recently because I just don't have as much time, it seems. So I was thinking of presses I thought might be interested. So I hit up Apocalypse to see if they might be interested in either a collection. And I think I mentioned the possibility of just doing a novella as well. Ben seemed interested in either of those. So I went through and I compiled a collection and I sent it over. It was pretty long. Also, it had a shitty title that I can't even remember now. It was a bad title. But I sent him the collection and he accepted it. And then as we were going through edits, we kind of discovered many of them had a theme of dysfunctional families. So once we realized this, it's something I didn't even think about until he pointed it out. But once this was something we both knew was in the collection, it made it really easy to go through and trim the collection quite a bit to cut away the stories that did not fit the theme. So I think the original collection was like 80,000 words long, and we cut it down to, I think, like 51,000. And later on, I finished the novella Indiana Death Song, and originally I was just going to release it as a standalone. But I kind of had this epiphany that it was perfect for this collection because it was almost like a summary of every other story vibe-wise, and it just felt like it had a good home in that collection. So I hit up Ben, I sent him the novella, and I said, what do you think about including this in the collection? He liked it, he loved it. We put it in the collection and it shot up to like 78,000 words, which is good because maybe 51,000 was not quite long enough in retrospect. So I'm pretty happy with the length it is now, and I'm glad we ended up cutting so much, which allowed room to add this novella.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the collection, I feel that it's a very fair reflection of the kind of breadth of your writing style and story aesthetics. Because, I mean, Indiana Death Song has to be up there with the absolute bleakest things that you've ever written. I mean, there is still some humor in it, but I think the darkness definitely overshadows that. Although I'd say, having read the script as well, which are we allowed to talk about? I mean, you wrote a script for it. Can we say that?
Yeah, I've written a script adaptation, but it's not with anyone, so I just wrote it on spec, and hopefully we will sell it to someone in the future.
Yeah. So the script for me, it seemed to have more comedic elements than the novella. The novella definitely was tonally darker, I would say. But then, I mean, in contrast to Indiana Death Song, you have stories like Fish, which is pretty much just like comedic throughout. And I mean, it seems to be with your fiction, you typically have these two modes where you've got like, we need to do something because, in that darker mode, but then you've got something like carnivorous lunar activities, which is much more comedic. So, I mean, was that something you were conscious of when you and Ben were putting the collection together, that you wanted to be able to showcase these two sides of your writing?
I don't think it was something we discussed or I thought much about with this collection, because most of my short fiction tends to be on the bleaker side, and most of it I don't think has a lot of comedy. Like, I would say, yeah, there's some bits and pieces throughout that have comedic moments, but I would say my novels, my big books, they tend to have a lot more comedy in them, because at least with me, most of my comedy tends to happen when I have a long amount of time to develop characters, and you get to understand like how they behave, and then you get to add these jokes through the dialogue and behaviors. But with short fiction, you don't really have that time to develop that way. And plus, with this collection, I think I just wanted it to be like, this is a whole collection. So that made it pretty easy to not include some of my comedic short stories, because I do have some. Usually anytime I've written a comedic short story or flash fiction, it was felt like a public reading I was doing, because I think when you do a reading, it should be comedic. So I've written a lot of stuff like that, specifically with the intention of reading it out loud. But none of that's in the collection, and I can see how Fish could be pretty funny. I don't think I intended it to be that way, but I can also see how it just is funny. Like, if that was made into a movie, I'm pretty sure it would be not that serious, because it's about a kid just fucking a woman who's menstruating endlessly.
Yeah, it's definitely absurd, and I think the absurdism leads to humor.
Yeah. I particularly love your story note for Fish, because most of the story notes, you've got some kind of long-winded, not long-winded, long kind of answer as to how you came about this. And I'm just gonna find the exact wording, even though I pretty much know the sentence. But with Fish, the story notes go, I lost my virginity to an older woman on her period. Sometimes it's as simple as that, folks. So,
I mean, I think that's a pretty good lesson for storytelling. Any inspiring writers out there. Maybe they listen to this podcast for advice on how to write, and that's something I would tell them. The most innocent uh, experience could lead to a great story, such as losing your virginity to an older woman anal period. You could write a story about a monster lady who corrupts a child into killing families.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah.
It's a good and it's not good. It's a very specific writing lesson.
I think that anecdote was in On Writing by Stephen King too.
Yeah. I mean,
so about that though, like,
yeah.
One, not about that, but about from my perspective of reading this, and we'll get into this probably deeper when we start talking about some of the stories. But when I read some of this, I definitely picked up on the autobiographical nature of it. And so like, and obviously you said that this was inspired by, you know, a real experience. And then my mind automatically starts asking, like, did the woman he lost his virginity to convince him to start murdering people? Or like, was that the line? You know what I'm saying? So like with this collection, I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of stuff that seems like it's informed from you. And it's obvious kind of usually where the barrier is, but sometimes it's like, I don't know.
I think pretty much anything I've written has that element to it of being recycled from my own life and then kind of Frankensteined into something else. Like with Fish specifically, yes, I did end up killing a few kids, but the names were different. So that's kind of like, you know, I'm able to be creative with it.
You just got to change the names.
I mean, I don't have to, but like the names in real life just didn't seem that fun to read. So you want to change it so the reader's like, this is entertaining. Yeah.
And I think with Fish, as with, I mean, all of your stories, like the pacing is great. You always have such a kind of sense of, you know, getting that story progressing from beat to beat. It is all very kind of lean, I guess. What good old Richard Thomas would refer to as trimming the fat. And I mean, I think as well, there's a definite sense of escalation, because whilst it starts off as pretty comedic in my opinion, then, like, you know, when the horror kicks in that kind of final act, it really ramps up very quickly indeed.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you picked up on that, Michael. I don't know what to say, but I mean, thank you. Pacing, I think, is something that's pretty essential, and I think it can be difficult to get right, but I don't know. Maybe just one way to do that is to have a lot of manic energy. So when you write the story, it kind of matches that at some point. Something I just remembered about Fish, and I think it's kind of funny, is there's a section of that story that describes someone's face caving in like a rotting pumpkin. And I just remembered for a long time when I was a teenager, I would use that same description a lot, specifically a rotting pumpkin collapsing to describe a face getting just crushed. I don't know what was going on with that. I think I just, like, I guess when you first beginning writing and you come up with something like by yourself that isn't just stolen from someone else, you kind of cling to that and you use it as much as possible. But I recall like using that description quite a bit.
Yeah.
It also just hit me now as an afterthought that I do have a rotting pumpkin on my front porch right now. It's from last Halloween. I forgot to do anything with it, and like last week it was still fine, and then like within a couple of days it just fucking flattened to this black carcass, and I don't know what to do with it now.
Yeah, I was on the phone to you when you discovered that, and then subsequently saw the photo of the pumpkin aftermath. can put that in the show
My
notes
dogs
for
keep
people
trying
who are
to eat
interested.
it.
Your
I
dog
wish I
tried
was
to
on a
eat it.
laptop. I could just walk outside and show you, but I'm on a desktop. So I think if I unplugged it, I would lose video access.
Yeah, that would.
We'll take you at
Yeah,
your word,
you
I think.
definitely would. Yeah.
So,
We can
for those watching, imagine this is a pumpkin. That's it. That's it. That's all I got.
All right. With this collection, obviously, there was quite a bit of discussion then in terms of what to and what not to include, given that you submitted over 100,000 words or so initially. So, I mean, what did that process look like, and were there any stories that Ben particularly wanted you not to include that you were adamant, like, no, this absolutely goes in, or vice versa?
No, it was the opposite. I think after we did it, I came up with a list. I think he also maybe came up with a list of ones he thought could be removed.
Mm.
And I'm not really precious about my writing usually. So, I mean, if someone's, well, not just anyone, but him specifically, I trusted him. I think he has good taste, and he was publishing it. So anything he suggested, I was pretty quick to remove. And some of mine, he was like, well, maybe we should keep this one. And I was like, oh, nah, let's just fucking cut it.
Yeah.
There was one that the last one we cut, it's called Flowers Blooming in the Season of Atrophy. And it was my really feels propane publication. It was in Michael Bailey's Chiral Mad 2 anthology. I ended up cutting it. He thought maybe it should stay, but I decided to cut it because not because of the plot. The plot is basically, it's about a school shooting that happens. But it was a little too positive, I think, which sounds funny. But the way it's written like a little bit too, I don't know, Disney and spiraling. It's about a school shooting that's prevented. But the way it's written, it just didn't seem to fit the same vibe. And I don't think I would have written it that way now. And I don't know. I mean, I look back fondly on it because of it being my really feels pro publication. But beyond that, I don't know, going back and reading it again for the collection, it just didn't sit right. And the only other story that really comes to mind that we did leave, but I was really on the fence about for the longest time, was a zombie story called In the Attic of the Universe. What the fuck is that story called? Hold on.
Yeah, that's the title, In the Attic of the Universe.
So that's a super old story that I was afraid just wasn't written well. I wrote it, I think, when I was a teenager. I can't remember now. So I was afraid it wasn't the same quality, but Ben seemed to like it. And I liked the idea of having something from way back then in the collection for people reading to kind of like compare how hopefully I've improved as a writer throughout the last decade or so. And yeah, I mean, I think that's okay. Like, I love Stephen King collections, especially the feels like 3 or 4 collections of his. And something that would always be cool is like seeing like the decades each one was originally published in. I always found it kind of neat to trace like the history of Stephen King's stories.
If I could say one thing about that particular zombie story, I would say that, and this is just me reflecting on, because I read the book about maybe a month ago. It seems like that story has a lot of heart. Like, it's got a lot more, I don't know, like positive kind of vibes to like relationships, like interactions between people, even though it's like a terrible situation. And while you were describing it, I was thinking to myself, there's got to be some kind of like hope somewhere in this book, because a lot of it gets pretty bleak. So that's kind of like my first thought that came to mind when you were talking about it, was there does seem to be a little bit more of like a positivity to that story than maybe a lot of the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I hadn't grown yet as a riddle to the schedule that still is no hope.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as Rob was saying it. It's like, you wrote that one when you were younger, so you were less jaded, or one might say less aware of the world, so there was a little bit more optimism. And then as you got older, it's like, no.
It's pretty, I mean, looking back, I'm pretty fond of the premise it has. For those listening, the premise of this story is zombie apocalypse. There's a man living in this attic with his child as a baby, and oh shit, I forgot the premise. Isn't he bitten? Yeah, he's bitten. He's been bitten, so he knows sooner or later he's gonna become fucking zombified, and this baby is gonna be left alone. So he has the dilemma: like, what do I do? Do I just let this baby go and see what happens, or do I shoot my baby and then shoot myself? I mean, that's something I tend to approach a lot with many of these stories, is coming up with this really fucked up dilemma or situation someone's found themselves in, and exploring how they react, I guess.
Yeah.
I
think I probably found this more traumatic than I would have if I'd have read it before becoming a father, because I'm really trying to put myself in this situation and decide, well, what the hell would I do? Because I mean, you've effectively got the ultimatum. Well, do I take care of this issue, and the baby will be no more, or do I kind of exit and hope, although know that it's pretty unlikely that something good that will happen? But it's
I'll tell you what just entered my brain as you were talking. You said ultimatum, and it occurred to me that, how some people say tomato, tomato. What if you did like ultimatum? I mean, that's why I began laughing as you were talking, because suddenly I couldn't stop thinking about that. I apologize, but this is the ALC penalty, baby. This is what happens when you get a little too loose with the coffee.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for sharing that thought with us.
I mean, I don't know who else I could have told, so
no one's going to think of ultimatum the same way ever again.
Yeah,
or ultimatum, I guess. Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, Rob, if you were in this situation with your hypothetical child, I mean, what do you think you would do?
All right, so I'm going to tell you a quick story. So I don't have my own children, but I've the person I've been dating for the last 2.5 years has kids that are 8 and 13, and so I've known these kids for a couple of years now, and I really care about them. And the older one recently was like chasing the cat or something like that, and then turned quickly and like hit their head on the door frame, and it was very frightening in the moment. Obviously they ended up being fine, but we had to take them to the emergency room and everything. And I'd never felt like such horror and such like a feeling of just, I don't want this person to feel this way. That, 2 years ago, if you asked me that question, I think my response would have been way different than now, because like you never want to see your kid suffer. And so it is like this kind of impossible situation where it's like, is it weak to not do the thing to prevent future suffering, or is it weak to do the thing to, like, there's no answer. So I think that 2 years ago I would have been like, oh, it's easy. Just, do the right thing and prevent the kid from suffering in the future. But now I don't know if I would be able to do that,
Yeah.
What about you, Michael? What would you do?
I think that in general, despite whenever I encounter really difficult situations, and I've had a few in the last few years, I'm a relentless optimist. So I just don't think, I could kill the kid, because there's gonna be that bit of hope that something good might happen in the end. I mean, imagine too, if you decide to kill the kid and you can feel yourself turning, but then you never actually fully turn, and then you realize later you have this rare mutation that meant you could never turn. But
Yeah.
oh
shit.
well,
maybe it's like, oh wait, being a zombie is awesome. I need to bite my kids so they can join me. This is actually pretty great.
I think too, I mean, the optimism, even if I turn, it might be that, it's not zombies who discover the kid. And imagine if you had killed your kid and someone else were to discover them. So, yeah, I think I'd, I don't know, what would you do? Like, maybe barricade the room as much as you can, but maybe also in the house be like, write a note, kid in bathroom, because I assume that zombies aren't that good at reading and comprehending, but if a non-zombie turns up, oh, kid in bathroom, okay, well, let's...
But instead it says, kid, please, bathroom open. That's a Walking Dead joke. It reminds me now, thinking about it, the end of The Mist, the film adaptation. Have you guys both seen the movie?
I have, yeah.
I have not.
Oh my god. Okay. I don't know how to talk about this movie now. Never mind.
Moving on.
Spoil the ending.
Okay. So,
if you're worried about spoiling it for me, don't worry about it. Go for it.
All right. So, The Mist, it ends with the husband, the father. He's driving away with his kid and a bunch of other people who have survived this apocalyptic hell thing that's happening. They're driving into the mist, and they decide we'll just keep driving, but then they, I think, ran out of gas, and they were surrounded by the mist and all the creatures around them, and they have a gun with enough bullets to kill everybody but one. So they decide, okay, the man, he shoots everybody, including his son, and now it's just him. So he runs out after killing his fucking son, and then sees, oh, the mist is going away and the government has come to save them all. So that just brought to mind that ending. And now it's really hilarious to me, imagining what the next scene was like. Him trying to explain this mass homicide he committed.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
He probably went to prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spoiler alerts on The Mist.
It was good to call out spoilers after you talk about them.
Yeah.
So every breath is a choice. All I'm going to say is there is one word in that story, and it is the best word in the entire book, if you ask me. I did not see the ending of this story coming, and the twist happens in the very last word. And I got through this whole story, and I got to that last word, and I was like, yes. It was the most satisfying, I did not see it coming. And even so it was building and building, and so the premise for people who are listening who didn't read this already, is there's a guy who, I'm on the right story, right? There's a guy who, this guy breaks into his family's house and gives the guy a choice. The guy walks in on all this happening, gives the guy the choice. He has to choose whether the guy kills the wife or the kid.
Yeah.
So that's the premise of the story. And then, without, spoiling too much, this guy's life just kind of crumbles apart after that. And it's just this pathetic kind of sad sack person. And the way that you ended the story, though, that turn that you take, never saw it coming. And it was just so perfect and powerful. I was really impressed by The like how you really led me in the path of like this guy is just like trudging through this sad existence. I never saw that ending coming, and it was probably for me the most. Even though Indiana Death Songs fucked me up crazy, like this story was probably had the most powerful moment for me in the whole book.
Oh, thank you. That I forget when I wrote it exactly, but it had a difficult time getting accepted any place. In fact, the anthology that did publish it, it was accepted by someone who had rejected it like 5 years previously, but then they accepted it this time. I don't know why, but I don't have a lot of memories of where that idea even came from, but I do recall struggling a bit with what to do with it because I had the initial premise of someone has to make a decision of who dies, a wife or child, but I didn't know what to do beyond that. So I remember once the second half, the ending coming to mind, that's when everything clicked. I got pretty excited about writing it. But I do think I spent a long time trying to figure out what happens after the initial thing that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one reason as well that you found this one kind of more personally effective than Indiana Death Song is just like it's a premise that anyone can easily relate to, whereas I guess with Indiana Death Song, whilst you can empathize to some level, unless you've had that kind of childhood, then there's like that other layer that makes it harder to fully put yourself in that position. But
yeah, I mean, this premise specifically, I imagine, is something everyone has put themselves through. Like it's a mind game almost.
Yeah.
Like, okay, of my family, who would I save? That's basically what this is.
Yeah.
With that, but that second, like, it's interesting that you say that it took you a while to come to that, like, that conclusion, and figure out what the ending of that story was going to be, because masterful. But like, I can imagine you were just like struggling with that story, and then one day you were just like, "This is it." So
yeah, I mean, we have a super fucked up thing that happens, but you can't. That can't be all that happens in this story. It's going to be incomplete feeling.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Like what's the point? You're just giving a hypothetical, but like what you did with the end of it makes it more of a story. Makes it more. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of like, coming up with endings, is that like a lot of writers kind of tend to struggle with that? Is that something that is particularly difficult for you? Because you generally fucking nail it. It like on the page, it doesn't seem to be a difficult thing, but I know like how much we can kind of labor onto like sticking that ending and getting it right.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think about endings a lot. With a short story, I don't begin writing anything until I know the ending. Typically, the ending comes first, except in the example of Every Breath is a Choice. I had the beginning before I had an ending. But if I don't know the ending, especially in the short story, it's just going to come across as this aimless thing, I think. But it's good to have, like, I mean, I look at it like writing a joke. You need to have the punchline. Even if in this case, the punchline is usually something horrific, it is still a punchline. And you can't write the build up to that unless you know what it is. And then you can come up with the beginning and then everything else leading to that. With books, I sometimes have an idea in mind. I usually have a vague sense of how I want it to end. I don't always have like a concrete idea. With Indiana Death Song, no fucking idea how that was going to end, which is probably why it took me so long to write. If I imagine if I had come up with an ending before I wrote it, I would have finished it quite quicker, but that wasn't the case. But yeah, I think endings, I mean, the ending is the last thing you read. So if it's a bad ending, you're not going to have good memories of that story. Even a shitty story with a good ending is going to leave an okay impression on you.
Yeah. And I just wanted to go back to something you said earlier about when you're doing live readings, it's important to find a comedic piece. And that's something that, I completely agree with. But if you're doing something like promoting, Indiana Death Song or We Need to Do Something, so pretty bleak stories, what's your approach there? Would you just read like a complete story on that kind of tour that's nothing to do with the book, or would you take
I've thought about this a lot, and I don't know what the right solution is, because it's I agree, it's almost like false advertising. Maybe like this is not the type of book you're going to be buying. I've read one section of Indiana Death Song out loud to an audience, and I think the audience liked it. I didn't enjoy the experience. It was last year at a convention in Austin called KillerCon, I read a section from it at that. Now, we haven't talked about this novella yet, but it's mostly about my own experience as a teenager with my mom and dad. And the week of KillerCon, my mom died. And then I went to KillerCon and I read a section from it, and I think I was a fucking maniac as I was reading it. I was definitely on the verge of just falling to pieces. And I guess being overly emotional is a possibility when you're reading something super serious. And that could have its good sides, I think. But I don't tend to write a lot of stuff that quite taps that way. Maybe I do. I don't know. I don't think I have enough pieces that you could read without context that have that type of emotional vein to poke. But with comedy, I don't know. You require less context, I think, when you're reading like a flash fiction comedic piece than you would something super bleak. Maybe it's also possible I'm just talking right now without thinking, but I think I'm making sense. I'll give you an example of what I plan on reading next week. So I'm doing a few book-related reading events next week, and to promote this collection. And I plan on writing a new flash fiction piece. I haven't written it yet, but I have it in my head what I'm going to write. And it has nothing to do with this collection, but I think it's going to be pretty funny. I'll tell you the story idea and what happens in it, because it's never going to be published any place. It's just going to be something I read out loud. So a while ago, I got obsessed with this tweet this woman posted. I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing, but it's basically like this woman tweeted how hubby loves it when she puts 3 soft boiled eggs up a vagina, and then the husband then like licks up the egg juices, I think, something like that. It's really fucking gross, but I don't know. It's amazing the way the vivid images that come to mind when I read this tweet. So the idea I have is I'm going to write a short story about this, a flash fiction about this man who also reads the tweet. It's going to begin with them just laughing it off, like, aha, that's a gross tweet. But then he's going to not be able to stop thinking about it. And he's going to begin joking with his wife, like, haha, that would be crazy if you did that, right? But then it's going to not be just a joke. It's going to be him like, come on, we could try. And it happens. They do it. And he loves it. It's the best fucking thing in the universe. I mean, he's so obsessed with these egg juices that the ending is going to be him crawling into his wife's womb and living inside of her.
What?
So that's what I'm gonna. That's what I'm gonna read to promote abnormal statistics. I don't know if that's the right move.
It's the right move.
But that's what I'm thinking. Okay. I think I'll
I
call it
mean,
3 eggs.
I thought you'd be calling it I Can Hold 3, but yeah. I knew as soon as you said this tweet I read, I knew exactly where you were going.
Yeah. But I don't know how that translates to people buying this collection. Like, I mean, someone might enjoy the reading, they buy this and get home and go, what the fuck is this? You know, I might be losing an audience by scaling away people with reading something like that because the collection isn't like that. But I don't know what else to do because I think like task number one when doing a live reading is to entertain. I don't want to read anything that puts someone to sleep. So to me, I need to come up with something fucking strange and hopefully funny and unforgettable. And the 3 eggs, I believe, is going to be that type of story.
Yeah. I feel like if you do that, it's like, look, if you've enjoyed this reading and you're buying the book based on that, maybe start by reading Fish. You know, because if you bought it specifically because of 3 eggs and then you start with Indiana Death Song, it's like completely different mood. So I reckon
not a single egg in that book. No
No.
eggs in Indiana Death Song at all. Yeah,
that's true.
pretty odd.
But I mean, the only other way
Yeah.
you could do it is if you've got the live reading, and if you can somehow do 2 extracts. I don't know if like is this going to be like an interview with readings, and like, you know, you can stand up, do one reading, about 10 minutes later you do another. I mean, the extract that probably would be most comedic is the elevator scene. You know, and it, again, kind of preface it.
When I did the KittleCon, I read 2 sections. I read that scene to make people laugh, and then I read a section when I guess I can't talk about it, but I read a much sadder section later on in the novella, and I think that was a pretty good like 1-2 punch. You get them laughing, and then they'll paying attention, and then you can go in for the sad shit. So I do think there is a place for sad stuff to read, but you do need to hook them before you can like get them feeling anything.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with a live reading, you want to entertain the people. It's a different experience than just like, you know, sitting down and reading the book yourself. And you know, I've had times where I've gone to readings and very accomplished writers have just like read like a section of supernatural horror where it's very dense, it's very literary.
You were
but
going to
it's
say
just
supernatural fanfic.
no, but it, you know, just reading this very kind of prose heavy description, it doesn't really feel like it translates well for a live reading. That's not where I'm going to get the most out of that. But if you got something comedic or you've got something dialogue heavy, then you're going to get my attention.
Yeah, even the times I've read like sections from a book that was published, I always take that section into a real document and revise it so it makes more sense to read out loud.
Yeah.
Like I have a speech impediment, so usually when I do that, I try to remove anything that I know I'm not going to say correctly. Or if I have too much exposition, I cut that and just like the fucking the bill bones of what I need to get across is what I read out loud.
That's exactly what me and Bob did for the launch of their watching. I took a section between the protagonist and the PI character, and I just basically formatted it like a script. And it's like, right, that's what we're reading. Rob.
And this is a David James Keaton story, so take that with however much salt you need to take that with. But one thing I've noticed about him with live readings, because I've attended several of his, is that sometimes he'll just do some sort of, this is something that happened to me recently, as like a thing he's talking about before he goes into a story. So like, I think if you're going just grim, if you had some sort of entertaining anecdote that was real life before going into just grim, like that could be a way to soften up the crowd without like, necessarily having another piece, because like there was one time in Chicago where he got basically the whole audience like just really railing against the Chicago parking authority people, because he had this really compelling story about like getting his car towed, and then he went into the thing his actual story. So like,
Yeah.
I think that too could be a way to hook people in and get them on your side before. But here's the thing, caveat: I'm not an author. I never have to stand up and read one of my things. So like, I take that how you will. But I thought Keaton was good at that as far as like being entertaining and get the audience on your side.
Yeah, that sounds like a good method. I've never met Keaton. I've never seen him read, but just his own, like his style of prose feels really conversational. So I bet he probably does great public readings. Something I've been debating trying to do one day soon at some event is doing an improv reading. Basically, just having someone tell me like a few things about what a story could be about, and just fucking tell a story for 10 minutes. I'm pretty sure I could do it, but it just depends when, because I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, I love that idea, and anything that's gonna make for a unique experience as well. That's a reason to go to that reading. And yeah, what you're describing, it almost has a kind of whose line is it anyway, kind of old TV comedy style to it.
Yeah.
I'd be totally up for like an event like that where you've got 3 or 4 readers and they're each given a different prompt. I mean, maybe you take like, the prompt out of a hat. Oh, what have I got? Shit, 3 eggs, but it could be anything really.
Why are they so wet?
yeah.
Isn't that called I think that's called like an exquisite corpse, right? When you continue someone else's story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any piece of art that like one person starts it and then like someone picks up where they left off. Yeah.
It would be fun to do that, but also have someone else assigned just for editing. Like so they can just yell, "Stop!" and run out and go, "Okay, this is milking. This is not milking. Let's do this again." I guess that's like a movie director almost, but still, that could be a fun bit to do on stage. Maybe I'll do that. I do a monthly show in Austin called The Ghoulish Show. I have people come out and do performances on stage, usually comedic to a crowd. So now I'm thinking that would be a good event, a good time to do that one of these days at that show, is to do a live exquisite corpse. So thanks for the idea, folks.
Yeah. God, if
Nice.
we wanted to practice it, we could probably get like a number of writers together and just do one of these on a podcast to see like how does it logistically work, and then depending how well it does or does not work would depend on whether we ever air it.
It's fair. Okay, like I said before, that's the first part of our conversation with Max Booth III. I'm absolutely looking forward to getting into more detail with the rest of the stories in this book, including Indiana Death Song, which is just going to be an insane conversation to have. I want to take some time to point out that Michael David Wilson is an amazing podcaster, and if you have not been listening to him, you absolutely must do so. Like I said, he's been doing this for a decade, and where I love to have nice, inspiring, off-the-cuff, deep conversations, Michael is a little bit different in the fact that he tries really hard to create a very thoughtful, polished experience for the listeners, and obviously to pull as much as he can out of the people that he's interviewing. So check out his episodes, find some authors that you like and listen to those episodes. I know that he recommends his Chuck Palahniuk episode. I know recently he interviewed Dean Koontz. If you've listened to Booked in the past, a lot of the people that we've interviewed have also been spoken to over on This Is Horror, like Paul Tremblay and Josh Mallerman and the people like that. I absolutely recommend checking out This Is Horror. Michael does a great job. It's obvious that he cares a lot about the product that he puts out and the conversations that he creates and the experience that he creates. So please give him all the support that you can. And then I will remind you too, Abnormal Statistics is out now. It is available. So if it sounds like the kind of thing you're into, it's a little bit more grim. It's a little bit, more challenging and dark, but it is excellently written, and Max is a brilliant author. So give him all the support in the world. You can buy that book. He's got other books available. You can listen to his podcast. You can buy other books from his publishing company that he runs. There's a lot of ways to support Max, and I absolutely encourage you to do so because he is doing excellent work. Finally, like I said before, we have some outtakes that I'm dropping after this outro. So if you want to hear some kind of zany stuff, feel free to stick around and listen to that. Like I said, it's a little more than 15 minutes of stuff. And do come back for future episodes. We have the second part of the conversation with Max Booth about abnormal statistics. And just looking at my wall, in the future, I've got Frank Bill, who has a book called Back to the Dirt that's coming out. I'm going to be having a conversation with him. Danielle Trusoni has a book called The Puzzle Master. I'll be talking to her about that. Other guests on the horizon, Jessica Leonard, who has a book called Conjuring the Witch that's coming out. Craig Clevenger. Oh my God. I love Craig. He's got his new novel, Mother Howl, will be coming out in June. So we're going to be talking to him. Eric LaRocca with Everything the Darkness Eats is coming out. I'm going to be talking to him. Rachel Harrison, who wrote this little gem, Such Sharp Teeth. Hopefully I'll have her on. There's a whole bunch. I've got a lot of stuff that's being scheduled now. I've got stuff scheduled all the way out to September. So follow my socials. You'll see what's coming up. You'll see the episodes when they drop. Subscribe to my YouTube, subscribe to my podcast, and keep coming back because I am just going to keep running myself ragged, trying to have as much cool guests on as possible and sharing our thoughts about their upcoming books. So thank you for listening. Come back again later for Max's second part. And then again, keep coming back for all the amazing stuff I have on the horizon. And that's all I got. So I'm just going to end this in the middle of my sentence because
people can
I'm doing awesome.
read between the lines. I'm neither confirming nor denying the reasons. So you can come up with your own conclusions. But I mean, I would argue
honestly, you live in Japan, so you were recording this even closer to the release date than we are.
I know. Absolutely disgraceful. I mean, I was gonna say, but doesn't it make sense to be talking to someone when you can actually buy the book? But I'm not gonna say that because then, that would be hanging out my friend Rob Olsen. It's like, so you've just dissed the entire concept of his podcast in the first few minutes. So that's why I haven't said that.
Well, our Venn diagram just doesn't really overlap much. Like I handle pre-release and you handle at or after release. And then, there's just that maybe a little overlap, but.
And I handle release. I mainly specify in releasing. That's my thing is I release. I'm not a fan of the pre-release or the post-release, but the act of releasing, I'm pretty much a fan of.
I think if I had, obviously release is the best, but if I had to, also do a lot of pre-releasing or post-releasing, post-release is probably better, like particularly if there's a lot of pre-release.
So the thing with post-release is I'm usually left kind of disappointed and ashamed. And pre-release can be fun, especially if you're right on the edge of pre-release, but then you stop. But then after so long, you just kind of lose feeling in the act of releasing. And then it's what's the point of even continuing? But right in those seconds of release, that's the best.
Yeah. I can see from your face.
So we know how you're going to feel. Yeah.
Yeah. People watching
I'm talking
the
about
video will see that.
I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. We're talking
Yeah.
about cum.
Time to change this podcast to the cum penalty, right? Right, guys? Is this why you invited me on the show?
Or this is cum, I guess.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Are you regretting your decision to invite me on as the co-host for this particular episode of Arc Party? I'll be honest, if we'd have been speaking to Joe Lansdale, this isn't how the episode would have started.
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
going to get Joe Lansdale on my podcast. I'm going to ask him. He's going to say yeah, because he I know him. And I'm going to get him to talk about cum. I spilled a fucking god. That's my new mission, is to get Joe Lansdale to do a podcast where we mostly talk about ejaculate. I think I can make it happen.
I mean, if anyone can, it's
that's
you.
my I will do it if we sell I don't know 1,000 copies of this book. Yeah, I'll get Joe Lansdale to talk about cum. Is
there a timeline that these copies have to be sold, or is it just at any point?
Yeah, by June 9th, obviously.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
6/9. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess Neville countries it would be 9/6, but I'm in the United States, so 6/9.
Yeah.
So you're giving people till September 6th then?
I mean, in
they
the
have
UK...
until September 11th.
Oh, God.
The deadline is at 9/11.
Oh, God.
Michael, I'm letting you steer this thing, so yeah.
Well, I think now we should jump. Oh, I thought you were letting me steer.
Did you want
to?
I know. I'm sorry.
I'm dealing this shit.
Like yeah. Tell me what you'd like to do next, because I think that I'm just going to agree with it. But what would you like to do next?
What the fuck is this? Tell you what. That's what I was.
I got this, guys. I got
Max
this.
Got it.
Next up, what would you like to talk about, Michael?
Yeah, I was right.
How have you guys been? What's life like? Doing any fun projects lately, guys? I'm the host now, I guess.
Oh, all right. So I'm going to cut in and say, and this can be cut out because this is kind of like maybe a little inside, but when I pitched the idea of doing this, Michael was like, hey, I don't know how this is going to work because I'm like I lead my thing and you lead your thing, and I don't know how this is going to go. And I think this is exactly what Michael was worried about, was this specific moment. So it almost makes me happy that it happened, because if it hadn't, then it would be like, oh, but like, so it did. So that's good.
You know what they say, you get 3 podcast hosts in one room. It's a lot of, you go ahead. That's what's happening with all of us right now.
Yep.
That's the age-old saying.
That's the time immemorial.
I mean, I was gonna lead. I was gonna lead on to the next topic, but the fact that you stopped to ask me what I want to talk about would imply to me that there's something that you want to talk about, Rob. So, what do you want to talk about?
Oh, I mean, I think that the thing I came most prepared to do was like kind of throw in my insights about individual stories, but I didn't know how much we were going to dive into individual stories versus like doing other stuff. So if that's something that we're reserving for later on in the discussion, all the chambers are loaded, man. I'm just letting you know.
He's ready to release.
It's release time.
Yeah.
I can see that pre-release leaking from him, man. Let's do it.
Oh my god. Yeah.
You guys know I'm talking about cum, right?
The talkers got very excited about the pre-release. Well, I mean, sometimes in podcasting, your guest just walks off. That
just walks, unceremoniously.
Yeah, yeah, that's live podcasting for you. Sometimes the guest has enough.
Sorry about
But,
that.
it's okay.
I
Did-
think
did-
maybe someone
did-
rang the
did-
Jill bell or something.
That's a more sensible suggestion as to what happened and where I was going. I was going to tie in what we've been talking about, and yeah,
He can't come. He's been snipped.
Is that one of the words you can't say around your dog? You have to like spell it out so they don't know that's the word you're saying.
Come.
But if you-
I'm
but if
constantly
you-
saying cum.
Yeah. The age-old dilemma, how to spell come.
I mean, I think we've had podcast episodes about this, haven't we?
Yeah, me
I have
and
lots
you,
of
we
opinions how to
genuinely
spell
like
it.
there's a
Yeah.
C-U-M-C-O-M-E discussion. I mean, that
Yeah.
is...
So for those listening, what I think we decided on, cum is come as a noun. COME is come as a verb. And COMEASYOUALE is a Nirvana song.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Yeah.
An important distinction, yeah.
Yes, it
I am
is.
on file today. That was not planned. It's fucking spontaneous. Next question. Let's go. I got it.
Next question is for Rob. Do you have like a remote control webcam? What just happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Nice.
so this is a combination. It's a confluence of two situations. So first of all, sometimes my office chair just goes like it lowers on its own.
Yeah.
I almost said goes down, but I knew how that was going to go. So yes, I do have a remote controlled webcam, and
Nice.
so like I can kind of modify where it's looking. So I just wanted to make sure I was still framed up pretty nicely, even though my chair betrayed me.
Yeah. Now, assuming that this goes into the final episode, and that might be a fairly big assumption that this isn't edited out, then it might be a kind of good time to make people aware that we have video versions of the podcast as well, because we're making quite a lot of references to what is visually going on. So I imagine too that the kind of broadcast is going to be slightly different depending on whether you're viewing the This Is Horror YouTube or the Arc Party YouTube, because I mean, with us, we go for like whoever's speaking, the camera is on them. But if I don't know what your plan is, but if you're going to actually edit it together as you usually do, then you're going to see all cameras for your view, which actually, I mean, I wouldn't normally direct my listeners or viewers away from, my channel, but I think that might be better, particularly because there's been times, particularly at the start and indeed now as I'm talking, where Max is just doing some weird fucking shit. Are you going to miss out on that if you just got to This Is Horror one?
Like when we were talking, he was just like pretending to read the book, or maybe he was actually reading the book. Yeah. So the video editions are going to be a little bit extra for you for sure.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. And
hey,
hello,
Max.
Hi.
I didn't even acknowledge that you disappeared for audio
Did you see what
audio
happened?
viewers. I saw you leave the room, and you had. Oh, he's off again. This is quite the video presentation. Well, in terms of the next segment.
Okay, guys.
Welcome back.
Feel free to leave that in. I'm okay with it. I vomited coffee out of my nose all over myself.
Seriously? That's what just happened?
Why didn't you do that on camera?
Hang on.
Oh, now I can't hear him.
Your microphone is fucked. Can you hear it?
Okay. It went all over the ground, all over my clothes. It was disgusting. All because I said next question, and you said next question is for Rob, and I wasn't expecting that. And I just fucking shot it out of every orifice of my face. Oh my god, that was gross.
See what you
For those
caused,
only
Robert.
listening to the podcast,
You hadn't used your webcam.
is this again?
Maybe.
For those
It's
only listening, yeah. Just some context for the listeners only. I've changed clothes mid podcast. Ridiculous.
True. Yeah.
Because Michael said the next question is for Rob. That was it.
For the record, we're all three of us professional, like experienced podcasters. Like we all know what we're doing, and we have a lot of experience. So, yeah.
Taking my socks off now because they have gotten soggy with coffee vomit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I think that was one of the stories.
Yeah. Wasn't expecting any. I mean, I didn't plan that to happen. I'm not going to apologize because I believe it will make podcast gold. But that's what happened.
It is truly astounding and perhaps marginally worrying that if you kind of total the podcast experience that the three of us have together, it must be very close to 3 decades. And this is what cumulative 3 decades of podcasting will get you. Coffee on
Shit, maybe. I think I began podcasting, I think, in 2017. What about you guys?
So This is Horror started in February 2013.
April 2011.
Yeah.
So I've got 12, almost 13 years.
Wow. Has anyone ever vomited the coffee on the podcast?
No. My building was on fire one time.
Not the same.
Yeah.
It might not be the same, and it wasn't the direction that I planned on taking this, but you got to tell us the story there.
Well, I have this kind of thing. I was thinking about this because, like, there's been some drama in the apartment below me, and I was like, if there's gunfire or something, I don't know if I'm gonna try and just like continue recording. But I was living in Vermont at the time, and I was living in this like 5-story building, and it was right before someone that we were interviewing was about to join the call. No, they had just joined the call, but we hadn't started the actual interview yet. And all of a sudden, there's just this like alarm sound, and I knew it was in my building, and Livius is like, "What's that noise?" And I was like, kind of more annoyed than anything because everything was set and we were ready to go, and we're just doing this thing. And it was like the fire alarm's going off, so I had to like get up and go downstairs and find out what was going on. Someone's kitchen was on fire or something like that, but it was nothing where I had to evacuate. So I was like, let's just do this because like the fire alarm had stopped going, so that it wasn't going to affect the audio. So like someone's kitchen was on fire, but I just pushed through it.
That's pretty awesome.
Nothing stops me from podcasting, man.
Yeah. It occurs to me now that what happened with me could be described as a release, and now we only have post-release, and now I don't feel great.
Well,
I'm a little ashamed, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean we've all had post-release shame at some point in our life. So I think this is going to be a bit that a lot of our listeners can connect with. So that's good. You know,
I hope some of the release got recorded on the video. I don't know how much of it was on my cam, but it came right out of my mouth and my nose. It was painful.
Well,
you've had painful releases, right?
Occasionally.
This is a Hill podcast, right? We can talk about that. Yeah.
You know, to think that about 15 minutes ago we were going to jump into another story and it all got derailed with one simple question.
It's my fault.
What do you want to talk about?
We've talked about fish and the zombie story, right?
Yeah.
So, what else?
Isn't that all you guys like to discuss? I mean,
yes.
All right.
You know,
can I take the reins on this? Because like, I have a story that I need to talk about. So,
oh God, what do you need to talk about?
No, it's one of the
okay, in
stories
the
in the book,
book. I
so-
thought you were just going to tell us some
Yeah.
event from your life.
So yeah, by the way, this one time. No, oh, now I gotta find it. Is it Every Breath is a Choice? Is that the one?
Yeah, yeah.
Hang on. I want to make sure that's the right one. Yeah.